Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're still watching Africa Today live on Nile TV International, and we're glad to be joined today by Mr. Amgad Shawi, political analyst. Thank you, sir, for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Sir, our main topic today, as I said earlier, will be the situation in Sudan and South Sudan, and of course the conflict taking place in South Sudan. We would like to start with the relations between Sudan and South Sudan, and the recent visit by South Sudan's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Barnaba Marial Benjamin. He visited Khartoum on a 4-day visit to discuss with Sudanese officials cooperation agreement and other matters of concern. How would you evaluate the current relationship between South Sudan and Sudan?
Well, in order to understand the relation between Sudan, the Republic of Sudan, and South Sudan, we should have a look at their history of relations between both sides.
Right.
First, we have to recognize that both sides have been in war for more than 20 years.
Right.
Before they signed Machakos Agreement in Kenya in 2002.
Okay.
This protocol put an end relatively to the violence and the counter-violence between the Republic of Sudan and the Sudan People's Liberation Movement, the rebel movement that was led by late John Garang.
Right.
After that, they signed the Comprehensive Peace Agreement in 2005, which stipulated self-determination referendum on the independence of South Sudan.
Right.
This took place in 2011. In July 2011, a referendum was held with a majority of 98% of the South Sudanese people choosing secession from the mainland, the Republic of Sudan.
Sir, just let me interrupt you here. And do you think this secession that you were just talking about was in favor of both Sudan and South Sudan?
Completely no. It was a very wrong decision. It was a mistake. Simply because afterwards, simply a few weeks later, disputes and conflict started once again between both sides, or both countries at that time, between the mainland, or the Republic of Sudan, and the nascent, the newest country in the world, which is South Sudan. That peace was destined to be short-lived.
Right.
The relationship between both sides has been anything but peaceful. We should admit that.
Right.
To cite examples, we have so many examples about this soured relations between both sides. A few weeks after the declaration of the independence, they started trading accusations of mutual interference in the internal affairs of each country.
Right.
They had a very dire dispute. The transit fees of oil exported from South Sudan through Sudan, through the port of Sudan. They disagreed about the fees of transit. Simply, South Sudan put a rate of $26 per barrel, while the South Sudanese people estimated the charge to be only 75 cents. This led
great difference.
Great difference, great discrepancy between the two rates. This led the South Sudanese people to halt production, and this prompted the northern side to impose sanctions on the Southern Sudanese people, and hence the relation between deteriorated. More and more, a very crucial and important dispute has been emerging even before the independence: the boundaries. There is a big difference between both countries about the boundaries of each country, because they share a boundary of more than 2,000 kilometers. A very long boundary, and we have 5 states here in the north and 3 states in the south, South Sudan, that they differ. They belong to which side? To which is belong to the north, which is belong to the south. Especially that there are some parts some areas in this region, like Abyei and Heglig, which is full of natural resources, especially oil.
Right.
So the bonds of contention between both sides are much, much more in space and magnitude than the areas of agreement. More and more.
Do you think, is there any way out to get both countries together once again?
Still, there is some more problems. Before answering your question, we should have a clear image about all problems both countries are embroiled in. First, we have the problem of citizenship. You have more than many hundreds of thousands of South Sudanese people who are living in North Sudan.
Right.
Who are in different levels of education, who are engaged in jobs, who are taking up posts in North Sudan, while the government of the Republic of Sudan insists that they should go back to their home place, which is place which is South Sudan. Second, the nationality. Although the Sudanese constitution allows the Sudanese people to hold another nationality, they reject to give the South Sudanese people the Sudanese nationality.
Right.
So you see how many differences, economic, political, regarding boundaries, social, and embargoes imposed from the north on the south, which blocked the trade movement between both sides and prevented hundreds of thousands of people from access to, denied these people access to commodities and goods. So, in order to understand the relationship between both sides, we should first have a look. We should first have a look at all these bonds of contention, at all these problems, so that we can decide if or have a hope that these relations would improve or no. So I think such a ceremonial visit by the Southern Sudanese foreign minister to Sudan will not settle all these issues. These issues should be settled when both leaderships have the will, have the sincerity
to cooperate, to get together. But back to my question, yes. Do you think, is there any chance they can get together once again in one country?
There is only, I see, this is a very important point. Remember what has happened for the Germans. When the two Germanies united, I think it was to the interest of both countries. They took the best thing of each side and then they cooperated and coordinated, and then we see Germany now. But we have other examples of countries which isolated from each other, like the Czech and the Slovak, and remember former Yugoslavia. I think if they think properly, I think they should reconsider the issue of reunion. I remember that our foreign minister at that time, Amr Musa, proposed when Egypt intervened to settle the difference between Sudan and South Sudan, he proposed a very important suggestion, which is forming a national unity government, a rational, a wise national unity government that keeps in mind the diversity of all the spectrum of political parties and ethnic parties in whole Sudan. It's south and it's north. I think this is
forming a national unity government for both Sudan and South Sudan.
Of course. And
this way they will reunite. We will be having only one
and this was part of the comprehensive peace agreement, because John Garang, late John Garang, was the vice president of Bashir for some time before he died. And then his deputy, Salva Kiir, who is now the president of South Sudan, filled in his place when he died. But after that, they opted for the separation, which was not to the interest of any of both sides, because a few weeks after the independence, they started a state of violence and instability, and acrimonies between both sides were rife. And I think this will not lead in a way or another, to any stability, to any investment, to any progress, to any development, to discharging services to citizens. I think hundreds of thousands, even millions, either either now dead or displaced because of the conflict between Sudan and South Sudan.
Right. How do you view the participation of the South Sudanese foreign minister in the Independence Day, in Sudan's Independence Day celebration? Do you think this is a step forward towards positive cooperation between the two countries?
Anyway, it was a sign of goodwill, but it needs practical steps on the ground to prove, to attest to this goodwill, because disputes and conflicts are not settled by just reciprocal visits and exchange of visits and rosy statements and rhetorical speeches like our brotherly countries and our sisterly people. This will not end the situation. The situation, the problem, the dispute will come to an end when both leaderships become wise enough to hold high the interest of their people, of their two peoples, rather than any other interests. And especially, I don't exclude, I don't rule out that there is some hidden agenda
for other countries, for some other countries.
Of course, in any political scene, there is some hidden
agenda.
players.
These hidden agendas were the cause of the split between Sudan and South Sudan. And these hidden agendas were the cause of the dispute taking place, or the conflict taking place in South Sudan currently. So these hidden agendas, how can it be dealt with?
When they give priority to their own national interests, because secession or separation or independence whatsoever,
or conflict, or
the term
internal conflicts,
saps, of course, it saps the power of each of both countries, because separation means dividing natural resources, dividing human resources. It means something which is not good to.
Of course, division is always weakening countries.
Imagine how much part of the oil is now divided into two countries instead of being put into one treasury to be used for the development of the country. Now, two peoples and two leaderships are sharing and dividing the revenues of oil. And
now Khartoum complains of the slow pace of implementation of cooperation protocols between two countries. Who is the cause behind this?
Of course, in light of this current situation, would you imagine that both sides have confidence in each other, or both sides are trusting each other? I doubt. So, confidence building measures should be built, especially that one of the most important oil fields, which is Heglig, is now stopping production of oil, which is not to the interest of either South Sudan and North Sudan. So I think both countries, sides, should be wise enough to deal with these disputes, to deal with these problems, to hold high the interest of their peoples against any other hidden agendas. This
right.
I think the only way.
So if we move on to the conflict, the internal conflict in South Sudan, how do you assess the current situation?
This is another bad story. It aggravates the conflict because Riek Machar, when he was the vice president of Salva Kiir, later he revolted against him and became an opposition leader.
Right.
And this saps also, this weakens also the situation more and more.
What about the humanitarian situation in South Sudan?
Would you imagine that under this there wouldn't be human rights violations or humanitarian relief assistance that is discharged or supplied to the needy people? I think within the past few years since the independence, 2011 until now, 4 or 5 years now, hundreds of thousands of people
were displaced
from South Sudan.
But how do you see the international organizations, the stance of international organizations, the UN, the African Union, from what's taking place in South Sudan?
I think also this stance is questionable because there is no clear criterion when they interfere to help peoples in need, when they intervene to assist those in catastrophic situations like what is taking place in South Sudan now. Why they keep silent regarding these issues at a time when they sometimes underline and highlight.
And where is the human rights organizations from what's taking place in South Sudan?
This is also a very good question. Where is, I am also asking this question. Why are you keeping silent regarding this human tragedy in South Sudan and the Republic of Sudan? Because people in the border area are suffering too much. Imagine that there is around 81 tribes in the border area, I mean the area of conflict between Sudan and South Sudan. Imagine how many people are suffering. Imagine how many people are suffering due to this conflict, this violence and the counter-violence. So I think they should be wise enough, they should evaluate the situation on the ground and seek practical and viable solutions to this conflict. Because the region is now rife with so many disputes. So we wouldn't add an insult to the injury.
Right, Mr. Amgad Shawi, political analyst, many thanks for joining us, sir, and have a good day.
Thank you very much.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, with this we wrap up this edition of Africa Today. Many thanks for watching and stay tuned for more coming up here on Nile TV International.